Hey everybody, this is Nate Smoyer, and you're listening to the Tech Nest Podcast. This is the show where we sit down with the leaders in real estate and technology to find out what they're doing to transform the way we buy, sell, and invest in real estate. If you've got an interest in real estate and technology, stick around. You're in the right place.
All right, we've got a great show here for you today. We've got Chris Rising of Rising Realty Partners, and it's a totally different perspective than what we usually do. Usually we have a software provider, someone who's building tech, creating tech, or an app or a new way of buying or selling real estate. And today we're talking to someone who owns and operates real estate, has experience building real estate. And the purpose of this show is to talk about the role real estate is playing in his business. And so Chris has incredible experience. They've built an internet service provider to better service clients. They're looking at how do they make commercial office space more like the home environment, like making you feel relaxed and comfortable, even talking through how do we make the lobbies and the brands feel more like hotels and following the paths of hotels. We get into a little bit of like futurism, talking about what's coming down the pipe and what's giving those companies the advantage. This is really important for anyone who's going to be playing in the commercial real estate tech space, because you're hearing directly from your ideal client, someone who's managing and operating a lot of property from California up to Washington, out to Colorado, and more. So without further ado, let's jump into the show. Well, hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Nate. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad we're getting a chance to connect. It is the busy holiday season. You and I are doing the traveling setup here. But as always, I want to get the show started right. Please go ahead, introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Thanks. I'm Chris Rising. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rising Realty Partners. Rising Realty Partners is a vertically integrated company, real estate development and operator based in downtown Los Angeles. We're about 5 million square feet. We own from Denver to Southern California. We really focus on about 9 markets. 5 of those are in California, the 5 major ones. So San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley, LA, Orange County, and San Diego. And then we focus on Denver, Salt Lake, Seattle, and Portland. And our main focus is kind of urban and what I call suburban. So if you're from, Southern California, think of like downtown LA, and then the suburban being El Segundo or Pasadena. So urban areas that are attached to major metropolis. Our focus is office mixed use. So that mixed use could include hotel and multifamily or retail. And as I said earlier, we're very focused on adaptive reuse. We have a long career, our long history with our company, especially with my father, of ground up development. However, our focus now is adaptive reuse, finding buildings in major CBDs, central business districts, that are about 30, 40, 50% leased, that are aged, that need their infrastructure redone, need to have lead paint or asbestos removed. So we've done a lot in historic, and really trying to create. We were really the first to do creative office in downtown, in Los Angeles, specifically in downtown. Not all of our projects are necessarily historic projects, but they really are meant to take a really well-located building and bring it back to life, and to do it so it's a 21st century infrastructure. So technology plays a big role in everything we do. I mean, if it wasn't for the investments in technology we made when we started the company, my father and I, in 2011, we couldn't be doing what we're doing. But technology drives the impact strategies that we have around reducing the carbon footprint of a building, around the health and wellness, and some of the social impact stuff that we do. So that's a brief description.
There's so much to unpack in there. So this is the Real Estate and Tech Show, and we almost, I tend to steer first tech playing into real estate, but today obviously it's a little bit different because we're not talking about your software product or your tech product. We're talking about, you're actually owning and operating the real estate, finding the improved or the alternate uses of buildings. So this is going to be fun because obviously now, for all the tech vendors out there who are trying to get to you, they're trying to reach you to solve your pain points. Now they get to hear firsthand some of those pain points. Let's back up a little bit though. First, you kind of grew up around real estate.
That I did. My father, I like to joke with him. He was in 1970 was the president of Coto de Casa. Now, for those who don't quite know what Coto de Casa is, It was one of the Spanish land grant sites. It came about to my father getting involved because it was part of the Pennsylvania Railroad bankruptcy. But I blame him today for the housewives of Orange County. So if he hadn't have done the water deal that allowed the development, they'd never have the housewives of Orange County because it all takes place in Connecticut.
Wow. Yeah. And so, I mean, so then you've had a chance to see then, because I'm not going to try and put a number of years on it. You still look like a young guy, so I'm not going to try and date you here. But you've had a chance to see a lot of changes over the years, and both from a distance, but also firsthand.
Yep. Well, I don't mind saying I'm 50 years old. I've been in the business for about 30 years, 25 years. But I've been in the real estate business so long. I remember early in my career when I'd show up to a conference room and there would be ashtrays, cigarettes, and cigars for the meeting. So that's how far back I go, way before email.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So this is going to set us up, and that's what I want to do. I want to first set us up for the perspective here, because especially from someone who's you've so-called done it the old school way. You've seen it done the old school way. You've done it the old school way, and here you are talking about why basically why your company is succeeding is you're leading, like you're seeing the advantages in the tech. And this is sometimes where I hear like you have the new age and on the cutting edge saying there's a better way to do it. And then you have some who will insist, no, we've been doing it like this for 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, whatever. It works. There's no need to change. And so while this is a one-sided debate, I'm okay with that because that's the point of this show. But so this will be cool. So go ahead.
Well, I want you to know I'm a very proud Gen Xer, and I proudly will wear to the office my T-shirt that says "Okay, Boomer," because I get I can't tell. I go to certain states in this country, Texas. I go to Wall Street, and the cynicism and just the overall negativity. I mean, it sounds a lot like our president talking about low flow toilets or not wanting, bring back the incandescent light. But our company is very focused on what technology is doing to drive value. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know how, I started having to fight against people and say what we were doing was philanthropy or it was just new wavy and it only would work in California. But I think the thing that crystallizes why what we're doing and what some of our competitors are doing makes sense is when Amazon produced their RFP to 50 cities. And if you looked at what was in it, it was things around carbon reductions. It was things about technology and bandwidth and fiber availability of that. It was around things around health and wellness. So when the major tenants that are dominating global real estate, the Amazons, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples are demanding this, I don't think what we're talking about is foo-foo. And I think what we say all the time is impact creates alpha. And impact to me includes all these technology strategies.
Oh, that's good. Well, let's jump into that. So you kind of laid it out. You've got property throughout California out to Colorado. Is that kind of where
Colorado? Yes. Yeah. I was on a fundraising call today. I hadn't thought about this, but the fundraiser said, "Wow, you're in all the pot states." I said, "Okay, yeah, I didn't thought about this."
Hey, I mean, there might be something there. You didn't realize there's a trend line that coincides.
We don't do cannabis, but I guess we have an audience that approved it in those states as well. So yeah, so we're up in the Seattle area, and we're in Portland and Denver, Salt Lake, and then California.
Okay, so in these cities, so these are some of the more progressive cities, and I'm not talking politics here. I'm talking about adoptions of new ways of trying to plan cities, build things, try out new technologies. That's what I see coming from some of these cities. What are some of the and your properties are primarily in that commercial vein, whether it may be multifamily or have hotel or something along those lines, or office. It's all in a commercial vein. What are some of the tech that you're leveraging to both give you an upper hand in your own business, so that's like, that's giving you greater returns. So, your investors are happier, but then also like, what are some of the things that you see long-term are making you more appealing to the cities you're working with? Because again, the cities we just kind of rattled off are some of the more progressive ones. And from the political side, that makes it difficult to build or change buildings or to make adaptations. So you're having to work both sides. And I hear that as extremely challenging.
Well, let me say first, our focus on adaptive reuse gets us out of some of the NIMBYism and not, my father did, when he was chairman and CEO of Catalyst, did Mission Bay. So if you go to San Francisco, you go where the Giants Park is, or exactly right where the new Warriors Park is. They built all of that. They entitled it. They built it. There's a street named after him there. But this iteration of Rising, we don't. We're not doing ground up development.
Got it.
And it's just, I feel like if you really care about the climate, kind of the worst thing you can do is build a new building. Because if you think about all the trucks and the cement and the steel, but also because we have this great infrastructure in our cities, and we have buildings that are 100 years old or less that could be repurposed and adapted. That's where we focus. But what I say a lot is we're only able to do this because of what technology has brought to the table. When we started the company, as I said, my dad ran 2 public companies, and I was at a public company with him, and we've done a lot in real estate over the years. But in 2011, 2012, when we started this company, I give my dad, who's 78 now, a lot of credit. He said, Chris, let's get a blank piece of paper and let's pretend we're Gerald Hines, Hines, the largest developer in the world. How would he start a company in 2011? And we both said it's got to have a backbone of technology. So when we started this company, it was paperless. When we started this company, it was based on Google. I mean, you look at our space, we look like a tech startup. Everything we do is around technology. And because of that, we're able to do things, whether it's providing a customer experience or dealing with the infrastructure of a building that a lot of owners can't do. And really, if you're a multi-generational owner who hasn't invested in your properties, you can't do it all. I see the Hines and I see the Brookfields of the world. They're competing in this tech stuff in a very big way. But that's not most of the real estate market. Most of the real estate market in these cities are 2 or 3 generations old, or it was a business who owned it. And so that's the opportunity for us. But let's go back to when I said we started this company on technology. One of the first things that we did was we bought a project in downtown Los Angeles called Pacific Mutual Life Insurance Building. It was a B- building that great history. There's really 3 buildings to it. There was a 1908 building. And this is how history works, right? So in 1906, Pac Life almost blew up as a company because they had the earthquake in San Francisco. But for a young guy running up there to grab the securities out of the safe, they never would have survived. And the board of directors met and they said, okay, we got to build an edifice for ourselves now. It's not something that can never come down in a place that doesn't have earthquakes. So they chose downtown Los Angeles. So they didn't quite know. But they built this 1908 building. And then in 1922, they built a beautiful 12-story Beaux-Arts building. And then in 27, they built the first underground parking garage. And when we bought it, they were all put together. It was about 320,000 feet. And it was about 50% leased. Well, one of the first things we did was start to tear out the asbestos and lead paint. And we were that was okay. It's an issue to do, but we're pretty good at it. But in doing all this stuff, we didn't change how we operated buildings from when we were at McGuire Properties or at Catalyst. And we got a call from one of our biggest tenants called American Business Bank, and they were screaming, saying, I don't know what you guys did when you were moving things out, but our internet doesn't work. And we're a bank and we can't operate. And I took the approach of, well, great, call AT&T or Verizon. What do I have to do with that?
Right.
But then I was like, wait, I can't do that. We're going to be different. We're going to do our customer service different. So what we learned was, number one, they were on a DSL line in 2012. And that somebody from AT&T had come into the building and just moved things and didn't even tell them. So we said, wait, this doesn't work. We're going to take over the risers. And then we said, we got to have a better option. We're building out spec suites. Someone's going to come to us and want to lease the space. What are we going to do? And I have a partner, someone who works for me is now a partner, who said, let's start an ISP, an internet service provider. It's not that hard. We started this ISP. We brought it in. We leased it, AT&T and Verizon. They have all this stuff in the street. There's all this dark fiber. And then we brought it into the building. And then this person and my partner, Mark Gittleman, we created a business called 5x5 Telecom. And what we do is in all of our buildings, we do vertical and horizontal runs of fiber. And then he was pretty good at what he did. And we have IP around this. We have these Wi-Fi systems now in our buildings that allow people to be connected at the fastest speeds. I mean, we're not trying to throttle anybody like AT&T and Verizon. You want 500 up and down, we can give you 500. We can do whatever you want. And then the Wi-Fi allows us to do this we have a copyrighted term called connected square footage. So you can be a 2,000 square foot tenant in one of our buildings and work in the park across the street on an encrypted network, whether you're a bank, you're a law firm, you're a accounting firm.
Wow.
You can work in our restaurants. And so that was a game changer for us. And then it led to us feeling that our lobbies should be like hotel lobbies, because if you can work there, why not take some part of your day and work there? So you go to a lot of our lobbies now and they have coffee shops, they have coffee kiosks, so you can smell coffee. It's music like you're in an Ace Hotel or something. And we really encourage people this connected square footage. And then you think about it, because we did that fiber, we're able to do things with our building management systems. And we partner with people like Carbon Lighthouse. I don't know if you have Carbon Lighthouse, but they come in.
We just had Carbon Lighthouse on the show.
Oh, well, I'm proud to be associated with them, proud to sit on their advisory board. But if we hadn't have done these things in our technology, their technology wouldn't work. So by doing the fiber, they're able to monitor everything in our building. So that's how we get to where we're at. So it's a very long-winded way to say that, I would give my dad a lot of credit that a guy at the time who was in his late 60s said, you know what, I may not totally understand what we're doing, but I see where the world's going. Let's do this together. And that led to so many more things, because if you think about all the tech companies that we've attracted, one of the first things they talk about is, what's our fiber connectivity? What's our speed? So we can really win business. Now it's getting to the point where I'd say I don't know if we can win it as much, because like 5x5 has now grown into a third-party company. Some of our competitors use it. But what I say about it is, we may not be winning business the way we were 8 years ago or 5 years ago, but we're not losing it. That's for sure. Because connectivity is such a big thing. And
there's so much in that, because first off, hats off to you guys taking a customer-centric approach. Customer centricity is one of our values at Avail. So I directly connect and relate to that. But some of the things you were just talking about, like, is a total different perspective to look at the building. It's not just a place where people want to show up and put a cubicle and then, everyone files in. There's other things to consider. And yeah, internet is a big problem. Just because the provider's plugged into the building doesn't mean the internet gets through the building, number one.
That's exactly right. And AT&T and Verizon are single customer focused companies. So unless you can prove to them that they're going to win a couple accounts, they're not motivated to even think about investing in the fiber infrastructure. That's why our focus is about leasing space. It's not about getting an individual customer. And it's a very different viewpoint.
No, I think it's so cool. So then what are some of the biggest challenges then? Like, obviously, okay, one of them is you had to start a whole separate company
Yeah,
to
that's
give
true.
you that competitive advantage over others, and to win some of that business, because you're taking on buildings. You mentioned 50% vacancy. That's scary. I mean, I'm not doing it to the tune you guys are doing, but I wouldn't do that with a fourplex. So I don't have the stomach for that yet. I haven't built up that. But what are some of the challenges in having a company that's your value is based off the physical space you manage, yet you're seeing that tech adoption is the way forward?
Well, I'll tell you some of the experiences that we've had that I've learned from. Well, we got lucky on the 5x5 on the ISP because it worked out of the gate. It worked out of the gate mainly because any other option than AT&T and Verizon, if you were a business, was a good option. But I saw how hard it was and the startup cost for it. Now we've got our costs much more in line, and it's a real business that's going. So the second thing we did after we did the 5x5 was I said, okay, let's do some tech investing and see if we can get people to come into our space. That has proven to be much more difficult than I had hoped. And I've made a lot of investments that were very small investments, but they were early on. And I said, okay, and you can use our building as kind of a test ground. And that hadn't worked out quite as well as I'd like. And so now we're trying to be a little more selective. But if there's a quality technology that really has somewhat, it's beyond just kind of angel and seed, we will use our buildings as test cases. And I'd say that to your audience. I mean, I can give you a few, but Carbon Lighthouse would be the I found them, they found me when they were just getting a little bit more mature. So it wasn't that much of a risk whether they could execute or not.
Yeah.
But their business model was a little bit different than most people. And, I think Brendan and the team there is fantastic, and they've really been helpful. We've just starting them out in 2020 in another building where we own a data center. And so I think they're going to be very helpful. But I would say this, there are some problems that have to be solved, and I still don't see a great technology. One is, how do you make the customer experience in a building like it is at their home or their apartment? So for instance, like, this sounds kind of silly, but people want to be able to get their DoorDash or Grubhub up in their office space. And that sounds like it should be easy, but it's not easy when you think about, especially in CBDs, the cost of parking and the time it takes for someone to bring food and park. You think about the security issues we have to have. I mean, we're really going to let someone carrying a $15 lunch just kind of stroll through security and go up into an office
just because they got a uniform, letting them on in.
Yeah. So there are nobody has come up with something that I think really works from a software customer interaction. And I was really hoping that one of the things that was going to be a positive light out of WeWork was that they had some great tech about how to manage all these people who were leasing desks. And then I read the article that in 2014 or something, they hired a 16-year-old high school dropout to run all their tech, and none of their tech works. So I was a little disappointed to read that. But somebody's going to figure out that. And then we want to be, like we say all the time, we want to be the test case for you. And we are testing something that we like. It's a group out of Australia that has pretty interesting for that customer interaction. And then basically there's a guy in Southern California named Rick Caruso, who I greatly respect, who's got the Americana and he's got the Grove. And he talks all about the time in the retail that's working versus that's not, is if you're not making people's lives easier, and then the retail is not going to work, because if they're not going to get in the car and go to a retail if it's not easy.
No.
And I'd say the same thing. We're getting that point about office. If you make it so hard, which makes me think, that the office experience is going to fundamentally change over the next 10 years. Now, if Apple and Google and Facebook stop building campuses, I'd be very worried about the office business. I don't see that happening. But what I do see happening is these are places where people have to come and have, companies are made up of people. You got to be able to work together. It has to be a creative environment. And you have to throw out some of that boomer mentality that it really matters what time you showed up, or that you drove an hour and a half just to be there in person. You have to have times to meet. You have to have central places to be. But I think the days of big office tenants are kind of going away. I think they're going to be smaller relative to their overall size, and they're going to have connectivity and use technology in a way to create efficiencies. So when I'm talking to anybody in the technology space, you got to make people's lives easier, whether that's you're lowering my operating expenses, you're allowing my tenants to communicate in ways they hadn't before, you're providing an experience that people that is unique, they can only get there in that office space. So we've gotten this whole technology. I really started early. It was a big jump into the blockchain and the crypto. Now I'm learning to be a little more patient with it all. But it's hard because the millennials and especially the Gen Zers don't have much patience for the old way of thinking and the old way of doing things. And I've been running, if you want to ask me another question, but I was going to go into one other story that I think. Yeah. So when I was younger in the business, in my late 20s, early 30s, I worked for a gentleman named John Cushman, John Cushman is the grandson and the grandnephew of the Cushman and Wakefield. And John worked there forever, and then he started his own company, Cushman Realty. That's where I worked with him, and then we merged back with him. But I'll tell you, there's no better leasing broker than John Cushman in his day. I mean, he's amazing. But let me tell you, here's the stark difference. When I started working with John, his relationships came through his boards, through his YPO, through Boy Scouts, and we would go meet the CEO of Merrill Lynch, or you name the oil company. And I'd be there carrying the briefcase, and we put together a market tour. And it would be John, the CEO, and me. And that would be it. Maybe there's a CFO. And I could tell you that office requirement was going to go to one of three places: near the CEO's home, their town club, or their country club. And the amount of time that they would joke about, where are we going to put those people, blah, blah, blah. I will tell you today, it's a fundamentally different experience. Office space today is a recruiting tool. It's what people use to differentiate themselves. It's almost as important, if not equally important, as how much someone's getting paid or what their benefits package is. And when we do tours today, it's 5 to 10 people. It's almost always women and men, and it's almost always around HR. And when you look at office from that perspective, it's radically different. So the old ways of thinking just don't work.
I hate to interrupt you, but you're so right. So Hunter Walk, a little known name in the VC world, he shared out a tweet that I captured the other day. Like this is like 5 days ago or something like that. I don't even know. And apparently in the early days, Airbnb started paying professional photographers taking photographs of the office. So they started, like what you're talking about, like leveraging the office as a recruiting tool. They started taking professional photographs of the office just to give it that vibe that they were trying to attract. It hadn't been there yet. Like the cool factor wasn't there yet. And they were doing exactly what you're talking about. And, you know, it's one thing if you were just saying this, like spouting it off, but I mean, you're saying what's already been proven to be true. Like it's already worked. Like if I can, as a real estate agent, attract more showings by having good photographs, why can't an office or a company who puts that little bit more into their space where I'm going to spend at least a third of my life throughout Monday through Friday to make it more fun or enjoyable or relaxing or less anxious, you know, and stressful. Like, well, that's a powerful recruiting tool.
And if you think about how does an employer make their life easier for their employees? One of the things we work on, how do we get Instacart delivered to, if you drive a car, it can be put in your car at your office space so you don't have to worry about it coming to your home, or your Amazon packages, or if they're your dry cleaning. You know, the thing about, I get a lot of pushback from equity sources saying, why does everybody have to have a gym and lockers and showers? I'm like, because we're trying to make people's lives easier. You used to be okay saying, hey, look, I got to get in my car, I got to drive to the shopping mall, and I'll do my shopping there, and then I got to drive to my office, and I'll work there, and then the way home, I'll drive and pick up my dry cleaning, and then I'll drive home. Well, in any major city today, I just drive 2-3 hours.
It takes so long. You can't do it. I've never lived in a center city like I am now in Chicago. And so like a lot of the issues I've had the pleasure of talking with people about, I actually get to now experience the pains, like package delivery. We have a package delivery room that's also the dry cleaners. And those the women who run that, I mean, they're awesome, but they are so overwhelmed with packages everywhere. They have nowhere to put them. And it's not even, we're talking about, we're still in the early days. Like I haven't even adopted a monthly subscription from Amazon, you know, for all my basic essentials and things like that. So, I mean, just the number of other people, I mean, we get a 50-pound bag of food delivered for my dog every time we order. So it's just, you know, buildings weren't set up to think through the logistics and how people were going to leverage new services and tech in the way that they are right now. So a lot of things what you're saying apply, I think, both not just to residential, but to offices. Like, and an employer who does that for people, I mean, then once you're in, you have to think like, man, could I really match this somewhere else? But
that's exactly right.
Am I really
exactly right
to risk losing this? And that's where I think the real value comes in, is if it helps with employee retention. That's where you get compounding effects, because, you know, there's just so much that there's so much value in that. I would love to know, like, what do you think from your perspective and from the buildings you're running? You brought up, you know, the food delivery. What are some other opportunities you feel that are being overlooked, you know, specifically in the commercial real estate space, that tech, you know, those who are either running tech companies or even the investors who are the ones supplying the capital to get that new tech up off the ground? What are some opportunities that are either being overlooked or being underlooked, or, you know, like underappreciated?
Well, I continually go back to the home experience, because the way tech is unfolded in people's homes, there's natural parallel to what people want in the office. And I'll give you one example. The way the HVAC systems in most office buildings have worked traditionally, you had to, if it's a really old building, you either turn the whole building on or you turn the whole building off, right? The air and the heat's in the newer buildings, you do it by floor. Well, what And then in the newer buildings, you can do it by zones.
Mhm.
But what people really want is that app in the office space. And there's one out there called Comfy that I like, but more and more, they want to know that, hey, I'm a little bit cold in this 10-foot radius that I'm in. How do I turn up the heat for that 10 feet? And so that technology is coming. It's not perfected yet. But when people ask me this when I go to VC stuff, and I'm like, just think about what are the things you've already become accustomed to? And I can point to Google Nest as one of those. The other is the food app. How come I can't get my food here? One of the other ones is in the office buildings. Traditionally, I had a tenant who I really respect greatly. Her name is Sophia Amorosa, and she started Nasty Gal, but she made really good with that, and then private equity took it over, and it kind of imploded. She's now just sold Girl Boss.
I was going to say, did she just sell? She's selling
Yes.
Girl Boss, right? Okay, yeah. Like 600 million or something like that?
No, I don't know what the number was. I don't think it was that. I don't think it was
wasn't that high. That seems really high. It was high. It was a big number regardless.
I think she would love that. But when she was our tenant, she did a couple things. Number one, she freed me from the boomers and my suit and tie. Up until Sophia, I wore the navy blue suit, the white shirt, the tie. That's what you did, right? That's how you impressed the boomers. And when we bought a building where she was a subtenant, I walk in and the first thing she says to me is, I don't meet with white guys in dark suits. What are you, with the FBI? And I'm like, cool, okay. So she got me into my more casual clothes. But one of the things she said to me, they were a 10,000 square foot subtenant. I wanted to make them a 60,000 square foot tenant. But she said, why is it you tell me when my people should work? I said, what are you talking about? You can work whenever you want. She goes, no. You have a lease that says that if people are working before 8 a.m. or after 6 p.m., you charge me $150 an hour for air. I'm like, yeah, well, that's how everybody in the business does it. She goes, I don't want to do that. My people come at 10 in the morning. They leave at 10 at night. Why should you dictate my working hours? And I thought it was a great point. And so we figured out a way where we could do her zone so that she would get charged. So we can't have our air running 24 hours a day because you're the only tenant here. So there's a certain amount of time you're going to have to pay for it. And we just worked it out with her. She did another thing which I'm grateful for her. She told me all about how health and wellness was important to her employees, and she gave me a bunch of research on health and wellness, and she wanted to be able to have dogs at work. I thought, dogs at work, that's a great idea. And so because of that, we came up with a dog license. We did this. We made it into this community event, and we had the one yip rule. If they scared somebody, the dog couldn't come back. But she really pushed us towards how do you create community? How do you create community? So what we would do is we'd have this once a year event where we'd get everyone to bring their dogs, take their pictures with the dogs. And we started raising money around pet issues. And what I found was, I think of the old Seinfeld where Kramer couldn't stand it that people would get in the elevator and they wouldn't talk to each other. And I feel that's how office buildings are. And so what can we do to break through that? And bring your dog to work day was one thing to do. Mm-hmm. Because now, as we said earlier, these are team decisions. So when someone's going to leave your building, if they feel like they're a part of a community, there's a lot less chance they're going to move to a new building. So these are all things that have come out of it. But none of this would be possible without technology. And I think about it every time I walk into a building, especially when I'm out fundraising, and they make me sign in with a piece of paper on something. I'm like, does anybody ever check this? I mean, if you're relying on that technology,
no.
You've lost it.
Do you use a sign-in system? Do you have one you built yourself?
Yeah, we don't do. We've stopped the building ourselves stuff. We use Envoy. We really like Envoy.
Yeah. Everyone uses Envoy. I mean, I keep running into it every building. So, yeah. What are some of the other tools in your stack that you're willing to share that so people get an idea of, hey, I'm running big office buildings, or for the vendors that are listening too, they get an idea of like what your stack is looking like?
Well, on the property operations side, you really have, there's more, but there's really two options between Yardi and MRI. We tend to use Yardi for everything that we can. We have some LP partners who like MRI. But we like Yardi because things like BTS, View the Space, they fit into Yardi very well. Mm-hmm. So the way we run our company is we use Yardi as property management and investment management. We use VTS for our leasing. We use Asana because we have a no email rule internally. And now if you're on an email with an outside person, that's okay.
Wait, pump the brakes here. You have a no email rule internally.
Yeah. So a lot of people I know like Slack. I think Slack's noise, but it just creates more noise. Nothing against the people in Slack, good, all that. We just don't use it. But we have a policy that if you were going to send an email to another Rising employee, you can't do that. It all has to be within Asana. And if you're working on a project, there can be no email interaction. It has to be within Asana. Because you can't track email. The problem I have with email, it's always somebody else's to-do list, right? If I open my email, it's all these people who want me to do something.
It's me giving you work to do. It's not you doing the work you need to do. That's right.
Exactly. So
that is true. That is true.
Within Asana. And then we're also a G Suite based business. So we use Copper as well.
What is Copper?
Copper is a CRM.
Okay.
So it integrates with your G Suite, and that's what we use for our fundraising. I have found a new, that's not new, you may have heard of it, because I do have a lot of email that I get, but we try to keep that from outside sources. I don't know if you've found Superhuman yet. Have you used Superhuman?
No, but like for the last few weeks, I keep seeing people talking about it. And I don't know why, like suddenly I'm seeing people talk about the Superhuman. I mean, I'm not into the email tech space very much. I try to stay out of everything I don't have to know. Real estate's enough, but yeah, I keep hearing a lot about this.
Yeah, well, these are all things that we use because I'm just trying to get efficient and I'm trying to take my life back. And I find that if I use the Apple Mail app, well, I can't schedule that email to come back.
Well, Apple Mail is garbage, so I'll just go on record saying that.
Yeah. And Google is fine. I get it, but I do see some. They're always like 6 months behind, so maybe they'll catch up. But yeah. But Superhuman is a great tool. But here's the bottom line: is that you and I are doing something that right now that is like right out of the Jetsons. You're at a place in northern Washington where you said you didn't think the fiber was all that good. I'm in my car, pulled over in Pasadena, California in the rain. I'm on my iPad and we're doing a Zoom call.
That's right.
Now, if anybody doesn't think that this interaction isn't going to change the way office space or retail or hotel, then they're just missing the whole thing. They're just, and the world's going to pass them by. And, I think it's going to continue to lead to big problems in our society if we're not adjusting to this quickly. And so that's what we try to do in office and retail. And that's a lot of the technology we use. I
love it. I love it. I mean, it's going to be hard for you to answer, but maybe not. Maybe you'll have a clear answer. But, as you're moving forward, I mean, we've had so many changes already in how people expect to be able to do business. And obviously how you're looking at that as what are my opportunities to better serve people. We talked about before the show, even about Gerard Poleg's book, and he's been on the show. Mm-hmm. One of the things he outlines very early on in the book is as yields become tighter, many businesses are moving into more of an active approach than a passive approach to increase the returns on their buildings and properties. Mm-hmm. So what are you guys planning on doing moving forward? So you've already seen the writing on the wall. Technology is going to help give you the edge. Being active is going to help give you the edge. What are you going to continue doing or do differently moving, into the next 5-10 years that's going to set Rising apart from others?
Well, it's a good question. First of all, Gerard's book is the single best book I've read in 10 years on real estate. I think it'll be reading in the newer real estate classes at the graduate schools. He has thought through every asset class and how technology is changing it. I also like that he has a millennial take, so there's a lot of optimism about things that I find encouraging, and why I like being closer to millennials than I do boomers. But I think the challenges that we're going to face, I think there's going to be a lot of have and have nots, and so I think the multi-generational owner is unless they are really focused on it, they're being left behind very quickly. And then I think there's going to be an authenticity that we can bring. I don't, as much respect I have for Blackstone and Brookfield, they are so big. How authentic can they be in these experiences? And I think they recognize that once they're trying to do a lot of VC investments. But I think the challenge we're going to continually face is how do we connect people to the real estate they're in every day? How do we make their life easier? And I said this to Dror the other day, I said, I see the office and the multifamily reflecting the hotel. That the services that you get in a hotel, people are going to look at office and multifamily with those same kind of brands. It's like you go to Hilton, there's 20 brands, right? But each brand has a meaning to an individual. I think that's going to be office, and I think that's going to be multifamily.
Interesting.
But I also think the market is so big in real estate that even the biggest brands have very small market share. So there's a lot of opportunity. You know?
Yeah, I mean that's so true, and you're not wrong. And this is why I think that I try to convince all my friends. I'm like, guys, look, I know there's all these other things, but it's the world's largest asset class. Like, imagine being in the early stages of the tech that's going to reshape that. I mean, that's just, to me, I'm like every day I literally lose sleep over this. And maybe because I'm just a nerd or something, I don't really get it. But, I see it as the greatest opportunity that I could possibly be a part of outside of maybe like reshaping e-com or being a part of the internet early stages. So, well, I want to shift here because, I mean, we've gone through so much. And one last thing before we get to the bottom of the show segments I want to jump into. I want to talk about the amount of funding that comes into the space. I always make a point to get into this because there's a handful of different narratives. And I think right now, and I'm dating this episode, but that's okay. Right now there's a lot of talk about, are we in a bubble? And they want to relate it back to WeWork. And then they're always pointing out some of the IPOs that didn't go the way people wanted. They're looking at Uber or Lyft or things like that. So first off, why is there so much a focus on pumping money into real estate tech right now from your perspective? And where do you see it going from today into the next few years as far as like how much gets invested and where that money gets invested?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the reason there's so much money being pumped into prop tech and to real estate as well in general is because we have negative interest rates in Europe. We have negative interest rates in Asia. People are starving for return. So people are hoping that they can get their 15 or their 20 out of a VC investment, get their 2 or 3x. They're hoping in real estate they can do the same thing. So we just have a lot of pent up capital out there, which is driving higher asset values. There's no doubt about it. And trees don't grow to the sky. We are going to have a recession of sorts. I'm starting to hear things now that reminded me of 2007 or reminded me of 2001. So we are going to have some. I think the problem is that the Great Recession was so horrific, and it was such a devastating blow to real estate that people think recession. They think that kind of recession.
Yep.
I lived through the early 90s. Painful. I remember my dad in 1992 giving speeches saying, "Stay alive till 95." So we've been through these things before, and we will again. That's going to happen. So that's one thing I would say, and I do think that that you're going to see some corrections. I actually took the Uber and the Slack and those IPOs, and also WeWork not happening. And then there's another one that didn't happen, which was the Endeavor, the talent agency didn't happen. I think that was a sign of some restraint out there in the marketplace, that people are like, this whole idea that I'm going to pay on a 20 multiple and one day you're going to make money. No. People are like, I want to see people make money, which quite frankly made me feel good because I was feeling in January and March, I've been pretty public that I didn't think WeWork was going to work because it was just an arbitrage, we get rents here, resell them here. I'd seen that before. But about March, I was feeling dumb. Like, what am I missing here? And so I'm not saying there was a lot of people in real estate who had the same view. So I'm certainly not clairvoyant about it or anything. But there's some fundamentals. And real estate's a supply and demand business. It is, always will be. And I think that's the biggest risk we have is that we're going to have too much supply, not enough demand, and things are going to drop. And it's going to happen in the VC world. I mean, I will tell you what I'm seeing right now in the prop tech is too much duplication. There are too many companies getting funded with too much money trying to do the exact same thing.
There's going to be consolidation. That's what it leads to.
Yeah.
Consolidation.
Or just gobbling people up, and maybe people just lose their investment because somebody was just better.
Yeah. Sure.
And I also see we are right head on in the beta VHS battleground in prop tech. There are just certain industry standards that people are going to have to pick. It's going to have to be one or the other. And just like the world couldn't live with both beta and VHS on video cassettes, there are just certain standards. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, I personally think one of the major issues is going to be how much privacy we give up. I think the world, we already give it all up and people don't even recognize it. But those people fighting to keep the privacy, like in an office building on your data, I think they're going to lose. And there are people with products that are trying to promote them as we protect people's privacy. I just think retailers, the demand for advertising, maybe I just believe in Tom Cruise and Minority Report, but I think that's where we're heading in a world where our world is advertising. I think the AR space and the VR space, I think privacy loses in those.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, well, I appreciate that viewpoint. And with that, since you're giving some predictions on the future, we're going to move into the part I call For the Future. This is where I get to ask each guest who comes to the show to give their best predictions based on the following 4 questions. Chris, are you ready to play?
I'm ready.
All right. So question number 1, what does Rising RP look like 1 year from now?
I think we will have completed our fundraising on the first value. I haven't even gotten into what our fund is, but it's an impact-focused fund. We're partnered with Howard W. Buffett, who is providing the impact rate of return metric that nobody else will have. So I think we'll be investing that money. We've signed a term sheet with a lead investor. I think it's totally unique. The KKRs and the TPGs Rise Fund, none of them have the metric reporting that we have. So I think we'll be out investing that money. We'll have our close at the end of next year, our final close.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole separate episode. We got to wait until that. That's cool. That sounds exciting. So, I mean, you talked about a little bit about the future of the housing market. So question number 2, what's the future of the housing market look like 1 year from now?
Yeah, I think in states and counties where people want to live. I mean, it's not just certain ones in California or Seattle or some of it, but in places people want to live, I still think you're going to have an unbelievable demand, and I still think you're going to see housing prices go up. And places where people that aren't in demand, you're going to see this big drop. And I just think the millennials are choosing cities that they want to live in. It's all across the country, but they're definitely not rural. And they're really not, if you don't have some major amenities, I mean, if you can't get an Uber or if you can't get your Grubhub, millennials and Gen Zs don't want to live there.
Yeah, that largely is the truth. I will have to say, though, however, I've been eyeing this property that's out up here in Washington. It's an 1.5 acres with like 7 different outbuildings and a giant barn. It's 45 minutes from all the conveniences, but I'm not like 50 years old yet, man. I don't want to be all the way out there.
Well, I don't want to be out there. I
want that one day, but not yet. So I'm eyeing it up of like, that's my prize, but many years from now. Question number 3, what's one industry trend you think will continue, but you wish would go away?
One industry trend I think will continue, but I don't like it that much. Hopefully it's having to tell people where we are in the cycle. This trend of everybody trying to guess where we are. You can't guess. It's going to happen. You got to be ready for it. And that's what I tell everybody. It's just, I lived through all of these. And at the time we were going through these downturns, nobody knew it until it was too late. So don't get over levered. Make sure you're doing things for a long-term point of view, whether it's doing a tech, doing a VC, if you're a founder, you gotta have a runway and you gotta look for that. And so I guess the trend is that people stop thinking that the world has changed. It hasn't changed in that regard. It's changed in other regards, but it hasn't changed in that regard. So I wish that would just go away. And we could, 2020 has a lot of, who knows, impeachment, election,
nobody knows.
Wars, nobody knows.
See, this is my ploy. See, I get people like you on the show, and then I get, you're getting all kinds of data inputs I'm not getting. So I get all the predictions. That's just where I'm at here. I just want to know. Everyone else tell me. All right. Question number 4 here for the future. What's one thing you believe will dramatically change or fade away in real estate as a result of technological advances?
What I think will go away are the fobs and the key cards.
Oh, okay.
It's all going to go, I just stayed at a Hyatt, didn't even have to check in line, didn't have to get a key card, all on my phone. I think that's going away in office.
Oh, okay. Your Apple Wallet?
Yeah, it came to my Apple Wallet and there. So the key fobs that we've had to have or the cards to scan into the elevators. I think those are going away, and they're going away very quickly.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a small thing to think about because it's just an extra card, but it changes everything because it's sensors. It's a frictionless environment from the moment you walk in the door.
Well, going back to the privacy, people don't realize to get that fob, you've basically said to the landlord, you can track me anywhere because they all have sensing devices on it. And they know exactly when you're in there.
There's some articles I just seen come out about that people didn't realize every time they were getting into their apartment building, it was a data.
Exactly.
But if you want the security, I suppose that comes with that or could come with that.
Convenience. I mean, I think when it's all said and done, it's a matter of convenience. If I don't have to pull out I don't have to carry a physical key. I don't have to carry a fob. It's on my watch. It's on my phone. It'll be on my contact that we're going to get in a few years. You know.
Yeah. Very cool. We're going to move into the last three here. And these are questions more about you, so our listeners get to better get to know you. First one is, what are you reading?
Well, I just finished Drawer's book, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. I'm a big science fiction geek. So there's a series called Silver Ships that I love. And now I'm into the Lost Starship series. So I love that. I'm also reading Ryan Holiday's book on Stoicism. I'm a big believer in Stoicism. I'm a huge Kindle or iPhone. I read my iPhone Kindle. But I like to have 2 or 3 books going at the same time, mix kind of self-help, biographies, nonfiction and fiction. And I'm a huge Audible guy. I listen to everything I can listen. My book purchases are like the old hardcover now because I always buy the Kindle and the Audible. So,
yeah, see, I used to do Audible. We switched over to, my wife and I switched over to Scribd because it's $10 unlimited. Now you don't get all the new releases, but I'm like, if you're doing 3-4 books a month, I was like, well, that's easy savings right there. But I end up buying a lot of the paperbacks if it's good enough on audio because I want it then as a resource. I'll go back to it later on. So yeah, very cool.
I'm a big user of Kindle Notes though and highlights, and then just if you need them, I save them as PDF. But they're always there. They stay with the book. So anytime you want to have your research out. So I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah. I wish I did that. It would make moving a lot easier. Question number 2, who are you learning from?
Boy, I learn a lot from millennials and Gen Zers, and I learn from my kids. I learn from I just learn a lot from people by trying to stay engaged and taking the attitude I don't know things as well as I think they know. I mean, I guess our whole life is a test once you get out of college every day. But I also realize I can fail some days. So, I just try to learn from everything I can. I'm big into reading news feeds. So I try to get a lot in there, a lot of different points of view. If I was going to say within real estate, I mean, I go back to Drawer's book was big, but also the guys from Fifth Wall Ventures.
Oh yeah,
they produce some amazing product or content. Camber Creek. So my view is I've got my little window into the world that I'm in, and I should know that very well. But I got to be totally open to everything else because it's changing too quick. There's not going to be one person who knows it all.
Yeah, very cool. Last one here of the last 3. What inspires you?
Well, I mean, I think my wife and my children inspire me. I really do. And that's kind of a cliche because when I was younger, I would say that I didn't really mean it. But today, I really mean it. I think my father and his legacy inspires me. I think really just trying to matter and, just trying to have an impact on people and be a mentor. Now at the age where my mentors are passing on, and I think about how important it was that they spent the time with me. So I'm trying to do that with younger people as well. And being available, I think the one thing about technology that is just awful is it can become so consuming just selfishly.
Yeah.
So trying to be more available for when I'm home, I try not to be on my phone as much, but it's a losing battle sometimes, but I'm trying to be more available.
I really appreciate that bit because it is tough sometimes. And I've been trying to do that while out here in the Northwest. I went and got lost in the woods yesterday and it felt good. I love tech and it's good for our lives. I feel like it makes things so much better and easier, day to day, but there's also being available. I think that's very aspirational and admirable. So, Chris, this has been awesome. I appreciate everything you had to share. I think you gave us a very unique perspective that we don't typically get on the show. We're usually from the vendor side in, and here you're using the tech, you're buying the tech, you've invested in the tech, you see the future of it, where it's going, and how it all relates into building a successful real estate business. Whether you just started from ground zero or had a little bit of a runway, you see it as the advantage moving forward regardless. And I think that that's a valuable perspective. I think a lot of our listeners will gain some value with. But before we head out and close out here, now for those who want to either get connected with you, learn more about Rising or and the other products and services you're working on, where do they go and how do they do that?
Well, I appreciate that. So my Twitter handle is at Chris Rising. So CHRIS. RISING. I also do a podcast. It's called The Real Market with Chris Rising. You can find that on Apple Podcasts or any of the other podcast platforms. And then I do a blog that I really am all about trying to communicate both with my investors and my audience. So I do the podcast and the blog. Every 2 weeks, there should be some new content that I do my best to solely write. I do have help with some of my team members who are doing the same things that I'm doing. So we get some of their input as well. And then our website is risingrp.com. So pretty available.
And I want to just give a plug for your podcast too, because I wasn't going to let you get off here without plugging your podcast. For those, if you listen to my show immediately, if you're not already subscribed to Chris's podcast, you need to go do that, because the quality of guests and the level of interviews that are on that show are truly second to none. I mean, CEO, founder of Crexy, Lease Pilot, Brendan Wallace from Fifth Wall, co-founder of Caveen, and it just goes on and on and on. There's just amazing amount of talent there. So you should go listen to his podcast if you do nothing else following the show. Chris, appreciate everything you share with us. Of course, yeah, and keep me posted. I love to hear when you start deploying that fund that you're pulling together. Feel free to keep me in the loop. I'd love to hear about the success of that moving forward. And until next time, when I'm traveling back to the Northwest and you're in your car finishing up Christmas shopping, let's stay in touch. But appreciate all your time. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. And happy second day of Hanukkah to everybody, and a Merry Christmas to those as well.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening to the TechNest podcast. Hey, don't forget you can get on the email list so you never miss an upcoming episode. That's technest.io. That's TECHNEST.io. Get on the email list. Go to the App Store, whether you found us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you found us. Leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends. And if you've got a guest or someone that you'd like to recommend, or if you think that you'd be a great guest on the show, hey, send me an email, nate@realteampanda.com. That's nate@realteampanda.com. See you guys later.